that's one of the things I was thinking actually of, things that have gone wrong in places that I've worked in, and wondering what you would say about that. So, one of them is, I call it make work,
Mm.
when there's tasks and people keep busy all the time, but it's really not necessary or useful. And yet, if you don't do it, you will be perceived negatively by other people. So I'm wondering if you ever have worked on, like, because then sometimes there's a good reason for the make work, and the new
Yes.
individual, they think, oh, this is all stupid, but they may be wrong. Even when I was young, I might have been wrong. There was a good reason for the make work. So how does a group resolve this?
Yeah, well, I think this really is where it starts. It should start with the values of a company and the vision. What is the why around it? What's the big picture? What do you actually want to achieve? And how and what values are connected with that? So, and these aren't values that you could just pull out of a bag that sound good. These are the ones that really everybody or the people, the leadership lives by, and then they should be cascading down because it's the way that things are here. If there is a lot of trust, if people are trusted to be innovative, then that should be in the behavior, and you should be allowed to take risks, for example. But yes, this idea of the self-licking ice cream almost, where it's just going round and round to be busy, that does happen in some organizations. And yes, you're right. Sometimes there is a reason, or there has been a reason in the past, which is now perhaps because there's a new system, not actually necessary, and it is complete. But that needs to be thought about deliberately and understood by the leadership, and then their behavior should change, and then they should help other people to realize that this is not what we're being measured about before, because anymore, because a culture is a combination of the way you do things around here, the way that things work, what's normal, and what's tolerated as well.
Yes, yes, exactly. It was fascinating when computers were first introduced to companies. So most people around don't remember that. But when we first had desktop computers, companies did not approve of it because they already had the system on a mainframe computer. So an individual would buy a computer themselves and bring it to their own office because it was so much easier to have this than to use a typewriter and a calculator, whatever. And then another person would buy one, and they would buy a different one, and another person in another department. So you would produce numbers and then give it to them printed on a piece of paper, and they would literally re-enter the numbers.
Duplication of effort, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I do remember those days. And on the other
Mhm.
hand, um, I remember I worked in a bank when, it was things were literally written by hand.
Yes.
Everything was written down by hand. And then, as much as I thought a lot of systems were a waste of time, later on, I realized the infinite scope for cheating in a company, and how important record keeping is to prevent cheating and to detect it and to reduce it. And I didn't realize that before. And of course, I benefit from that because when I put my money in the bank, I know it's going to be there. But there are times and places where that doesn't happen. So now I have a little more respect for what we might call bureaucracy.
Yeah, well, the governance systems in any organization are important. And they're the ones that people go, oh, it's just so boring, and, or things like health and safety. But the whole point is that it should be not just for its own sake, but part of the culture and part of why you do something. And in this case, in the bank, so that the customer can be secure, and so that there isn't cheating in the system. So, yeah.
So let's say that I have worked in a group, and there's one person who dominates everything, not the boss, but one of the team. and nobody speaks up to them. Everybody defers to them. And in the culture, you think that if you resist them, you're going to be seen as the troublemaker. This is what always bothered me. And so I'm curious how you teach people to deal with something like that.
Yeah, well, this is a very interesting one because part of my work is around teams, yeah, and how to get the best performance from teams. And there's a bit of science and a bit of art in there, isn't there? That it's in some ways there's some things that you can predict and that you can manage. And if you give a team, clear goals and not just give them, you help let people help to define them themselves for a clear purpose and a shared purpose, not just, a pseudo team where you happen to be in the same room or doing similar jobs, but actually you don't need to work together closely. A proper team, you should be relying on each other. So part of it is the structure of the team. Are you really relying on each other, all of you, and using your skills, your different skills? So whether people have certain technical
Well, that's
skills
how
or
it
soft
should be.
skills.
But
Yeah.
what if
But there's
people
part
don't?
of it
So
that,
what do you
yeah,
do?
it's not easy to make that, but part of it is the structure and setting that up. But yeah, then there are roles within the team, and I'm not talking about the roles which are assigned. I'm just talking about the sort of roles of someone is going to be an agitator, almost like a terrorist. There's almost always someone like that. And even if that person leaves, somebody else tends to take up that role. Maybe not as, um, obviously, but there are, certain roles that, and it can be very positive for a team to have somebody saying, well, what about this? What about that? But I think you're talking about something more disruptive than that.
Well, it's not necessarily disruptive. It makes your workday unpleasant because they
Mm,
are always trying to control people around them,
mm.
and other people don't resist. So you end up having them control you
Yes. Well, in
or
that case, I mean, I think that
be blamed
uh,
for the conflict.
yes. Well, in that case, it's the leader above that person who should be managing them. And, it depends on the specifics of the
Well,
person
the
and the
leader
environment.
says if you tell the leader about the problem, then you will be a tattletale because
Yeah, well,
everyone will know that if the leader knows about it, it's because you're obviously the one who told them.
yes, it's not easy to do that, to sort of escalate it. But I've been in situations where I've been brought in with the team, and that's part of the problem. And then you need someone. That's where somebody like a consultant is a good person to do that, because you can take the backlash as well, of whereas somebody who's within a hierarchy cannot, or as you say, that if you do that, there are negative consequences for you. So yeah, I mean, in that case, the person would probably have some issues that were meaning they felt out of control themselves, and so they were trying to control everyone else to feel that. But without going into the specifics of it, I wouldn't be able to say, and I'm not a psychologist. So, but I think that these sort of things happen a lot. And as I said, with somebody who's objective, you can actually more easily get into that. Whereas you're right, with someone who is a subordinate in a hierarchy, it's going to backfire.
Yeah. So this is why third parties are brought in, I
Yes.
guess.
Yeah.
So, as you know, I'm always trying to look at the animal brain to explain our daily lives and to help figure out how we can make them less frustrating. And so you've had some experience with horses, I understand, and your daughter riding horses. And so tell us about that.
Yes, I mean, I used to ride horses as well when I was a lot younger, and I did try to do it quite recently, but yeah, you realize how difficult it is. I haven't forgotten some of the basics, but yes, to actually have a relationship between an animal and a human, and two types of animals, you do need to use a lot of emotional intelligence in the same way as it would in my work, because you cannot force an animal. This could be a horse, could be a dog, but particularly horses, when you're riding them, you can't force them to do what you want. They're much stronger than you physically, and they also have their own will and they have their own personality. So yeah, we go once a week or twice a week, and I like to observe because I do see the parallels with my work. And I actually wrote a post about it, which I think you saw, Loretta, and which is also inspired by some of the posts I read of yours, where I was just thinking, you need to build a relationship. You also need to look at the circumstances, what's happening that day. How does the animal feel? How is the animal within the herd? How is their position? Are they under, when there was a new horse came to the stable, suddenly the whole balance is flipped out of where it was, and there's fighting going on, and the horse is trying to work out who is the top one now and who's next in the ranking. So those kind of things, really interesting. And then, yeah, you can give clear directions or requests to a horse that will help, whether you use your hands or your feet and how you do that, your legs. That will help. Also, of course, the training of the horse, how well they've been trained, how well they've been looked after. If they've been treated badly, they will remember that. And if you go too close to their face, or there's a horse in the stables where we are who hates water because water was used as a spray, as a kind of punishment for that horse, so they remember. So it's a very fine balance and a dance between the horse and the rider, isn't it?
Yes, and this is what
Having a relationship.
no, the core of my new course is
Mm,
managing your inner mammal like a horse and rider working together, and that your inner mammal, you can't force it to do things.
right.
It is carrying fears from its past, and you can guide it with clear signals, but you may think you're already doing that and it's not working, but you can build new ones. And the training is very important. But like if you have a horse and you say, well, it wasn't trained well, so you just give up on it, but you can't do that with your own inner mammal. So that's why we have this concept of retraining. And it's hard to retrain a horse that's already adult, but that's what we are all trying to do all the time. So it really helps to see that.